This phenomenon is known as false confession, where individuals claim responsibility for crimes they did not commit. False confessions can occur due to psychological factors like suggestibility or a desire for notoriety. Law enforcement must verify each claim through evidence, which consumes significant investigative resources. For families of victims, false confessions create emotional turmoil by raising and dashing hopes repeatedly. This differs from serial killers who typically have specific patterns and leave forensic evidence. The psychological burden on investigators includes sorting credible leads from attention-seeking behavior. False confessions can stem from mental health issues or a distorted need for recognition. Each unverified claim delays justice for actual victims and their families seeking closure. The individual's claims emerged gradually over several years while he was already incarcerated for an unrelated homicide. This prolonged timeline of alleged crimes spanned multiple geographic regions, complicating investigation efforts. Such extended confession periods are rare in forensic psychology, typically indicating complex psychological factors at play. The phenomenon has become a case study in how criminal claims can evolve over time during incarceration. This pattern differs from typical confessions, which usually occur closer to the time of arrest or trial. The regional spread of alleged crimes presents logistical challenges for verification and evidence collection. Forensic experts analyze such cases to understand memory reliability and motivation behind delayed criminal claims. The existing homicide conviction provided a controlled environment where these additional claims could surface. The sheer volume and geographic range of his confessions immediately presented a complex challenge for detectives. Investigators faced the difficult task of separating verified facts from unsubstantiated claims across multiple jurisdictions. This type of situation creates investigative hurdles, as each claim requires separate verification and resource allocation. The one verified crime stands in stark contrast to the numerous unverified confessions. This conviction is the only one definitively linked to him through physical evidence, witness testimony, and a solid prosecutorial case. Such cases highlight the importance of physical evidence in establishing legal certainty versus mere confessions. The individual was convicted and serving a lengthy sentence for a single murder. This creates a common pattern in criminal investigations, where one verified crime anchors numerous unverified claims. The pattern of confessions began with a few cases, then expanded dramatically. The number of murders he claimed responsibility for grew exponentially, eventually exceeding 200. This phenomenon is known as false confessions, where individuals admit to crimes they did not commit. He provided details about the crimes. Some were generic descriptions that could apply to many cases. Other details were surprisingly specific, mentioning crime scene elements, victim characteristics, and methods used. Investigators had to meticulously cross-reference each confession with unsolved case files. The sheer volume created an investigative bottleneck, overwhelming standard procedures. This pattern is consistent with documented cases where a single individual makes numerous false claims. The challenge became separating plausible truths from fabricated narratives within the mass of statements. The investigation into these confessions began with standard verification procedures. Detectives cross-referenced the claims with existing case files and alibi records. This process revealed significant inconsistencies in the confessor's statements. He claimed involvement in crimes that occurred during periods when he was documented as being elsewhere. For example, he confessed to offenses that happened while he was provably in custody or under supervision. Such factual contradictions are a known pattern in false confessions, which can arise from various psychological factors. The investigation thus shifted from solving cold cases to understanding the motives behind the false admissions. This phase focused on the credibility of the information rather than its immediate application to unsolved crimes. The individual described multiple murders in locations he had never actually visited. In each case, the specific, non-public details he provided did not match the actual evidence collected from the crime scenes. This pattern is common in false confessions, where knowledge comes from media reports rather than first-hand experience. Forensic evidence, such as DNA, ballistics, or fingerprints, never connected him to these other homicides. The absence of physical evidence is a critical red flag for investigators assessing the validity of such claims. This creates a clear discrepancy between his narrative and the established facts of the investigations. Without corroborating forensic links, such statements are typically classified as unreliable. The investigation thus focused on verifying his accounts against immutable physical evidence, which consistently failed to align. Experts analyzing this case emphasize that we cannot identify one definitive, singular motivation behind his actions. Several possible psychological drivers have been proposed by professionals in the field. One theory points to a desire for notoriety and control, particularly within the structured environment of the prison system. Another possibility is pathological lying, a condition where deception becomes a compulsive behavior. A need for attention from authorities, or an attempt to complicate his legal situation, are also considered plausible factors. It is likely a combination of these factors, a common pattern in complex fraud and deception cases. This ambiguity is a hallmark of many high-profile scandals, where clear, simple motives are often elusive. Ultimately, without a clear confession or definitive evidence, His precise psychological drivers remain a subject of analysis, not fact. A common misconception is that law enforcement believed all these confessions. While initial claims demanded investigative resources, investigators quickly recognized a pattern of falsehoods. The real tragedy was the operational cost. Each new false confession forced police and prosecutors to spend time and money ruling the individual out. This process diverted critical resources from active investigations into legitimate cases. It also forced victim families to relive their trauma, clinging to false hope before another dead end. Another limitation is understanding the full scope of the disruption. The exact number of agencies affected and total man-hours wasted is difficult to quantify precisely. However, it is widely recognized as a significant drain on multiple public safety and judicial systems. This case demonstrates why investigators must treat confessions with extreme caution. Confessions alone, without supporting evidence, are considered unreliable in legal proceedings. The principle of evidence overstatement is fundamental to maintaining investigative integrity. This approach prevents wrongful convictions that can occur when confessions are taken at face value. Investigative rigor requires corroborating every claim with physical or documentary evidence. Similar patterns appear in fraud cases, where false confessions are sometimes coerced or fabricated. This lesson applies broadly to any investigation where statements must be verified against facts. The case serves as a stark reminder that truth emerges from evidence, not just from what people say. The prison environment can create perverse incentives, where notoriety becomes a form of social capital. This psychological dynamic can encourage inmates to make false claims, seeking attention or status. For law enforcement, this case underscores a systemic vulnerability: the lack of centralized confession databases. Without such systems, false confessions can spread across jurisdictions, wasting immense investigative resources. The true cost is not the fictional crimes, but the deception's impact: drained police budgets and diverted manpower. Families of actual victims endure renewed emotional distress when false claims muddy the investigative waters. This pattern reveals that a simple statement is insufficient. Truth requires verification and systemic checks. False confessions often arise from intense interrogation techniques that exploit psychological vulnerabilities, leading individuals to internalize guilt for events they did not experience. Investigators face the challenge of distinguishing between genuine remorse and fabricated narratives, which requires meticulous cross-referencing with physical evidence and timelines. Common patterns include confessions that lack specific, verifiable details or contradict established forensic findings, signaling potential deception or psychological disturbance. Survival principles for investigators involve maintaining skepticism, avoiding confirmation bias, and prioritizing evidence over compelling but unsubstantiated statements. Investigative limitations include the inability to fully replicate crime scenes or access all historical data, which can hinder verification of distant claims. A common misconception is that false confessions are always deliberate lies. In reality, they can stem from memory distortions or external coercion. The mechanisms behind false confessions involve psychological pressures such as prolonged isolation or promises of leniency, which can overwhelm rational judgment. In forensic contexts, patterns like vague or evolving stories over time often indicate fabrications, unlike consistent, detailed accounts from genuine perpetrators. Survival for justice systems relies on rigorous protocols, such as recording interrogations and involving psychological experts, to filter out invalid confessions. Ultimately, false confessions drain resources and prolong suffering, underscoring the need for evidence-based investigations to protect both the innocent and seek truth.